As we move towards the new year and a fresh start all round, I wanted to take a moment to look back at this amazing game that somehow manages to consume so much of our free time. Today we're going to rewind the clock in Tacticus, what was released, what changed, what broke, what got fixed, and answer the big question. Was this actually a good year for the game? In this video, we'll go quarter by quarter through the biggest updates, pick out the champions that really shaped the meta, talk about the events, and of course look at how the devs have handled things along the way. And then, right at the end, I'll give you my honest verdict on whether Tacticus is in a better place now than it was a year ago, and what I think is coming next. Quarter 1 kicked off with 3 big shifts: campaign events, the incursion rework, and a couple of huge out-of-game updates. Campaign events became the new recurring PvE pillar, multi-week progress-saving faction-focused campaigns that ramp up hard at the top end. The original campaign stayed for beginners, but these feel like proper mid-to-end game challenges with real rewards. A lot of the community is still weirdly negative on them, but personally, I love having something tough to chew on that isn't just mindlessly clicking on repeat. Incursions got reworked away from a straight line into a more flexible tiered routes with rewards tuned around Machine of Wars. It's clearly aiming for that Slay the Spire light feeling, and although it's not quite there yet, I really like that incursions basically have become the Machine of War workshop. You know exactly what to do to grab the next one, and when there's nothing new to chase, it's easy raidable rewards. Legendary events also quietly leveled up in quarter 1. Dante's event in particular was the first real difficulty spike, the Pattermine event being the last one you could scrape through with 8 to 10 decent Gold 1 units, whereas Dante realistically needed 20 to 25 well-built characters if you wanted the full rewards, and even more if you're chasing winged. I'm a fan of that, as legendary events are my favourite mode, and I'd rather have to think and prepare than sleepwalk through them. Outside of the client, quarter 1 was massive too. The player API beta launched and completely changed how nerds like me interact with the game. Suddenly we could pool our own data for planning sheets, raid tools, and all the stuff that I've been sharing with you for free. Before that, I was doing frankly stupid amount of manual work in order to prepare all of these tools. Add on top of that the PC version quietly dropping, which I now bounce constantly between, and Q1 really set the foundation for how we manage Tacticus as much as how we play it. There was a total of 17 characters released and 4 Machines of War throughout the year, and in quarter 1 it felt like Snowprint were drawing a line under unfinished business. Isaac and Jude rounded out the Gene Stealers, Cygex closed off AdMech, and Dante finished the Blood Angels. Then, in early quarter 2, they added Tarvak and Forecast to finally finish World Eaters and Dark Angels, giving us a cleaner faction platform for the rest of the year. If we're honest about the impact though, quarter 1 belonged to Dante. His buffs to what would later become the Custodes team were huge. He slots into a ton of legendary events, and up until the Custodes fully arrived, the Blood Angels were my number 2 faction of 2025. Gene Stealers are my personal darlings though, and my highest leveled faction, but they're not really peaking in any specific mode right now. They're fun, but not meta-defining unless you're crushing new players in Gold 1 Tournament Arena. The Plague Burst Crawler was a real change of direction for Machine of Wars, the first one that really felt faction locked. If you're not playing Death Guard, you're not really getting its full value, but if you are, it slots in beautifully. I play a lot of Death Guard, and I absolutely feel its absence when I don't bring it. Balance-wise for characters, quarter 1 had the right idea, but slightly wobbly execution. Azrael, Morvenval, Mephiston, Pastilian, Eldrion, Ragnar and Vitruvius all got touched. Azrael and Morvenval's changes barely moved the needle at all though. The headline was Eldrion finally being knocked off his throne as the mandatory buffer in basically every mode. It was necessary, and it allowed us to really create new options and possibilities within the game. Ragnar's nerf on the other hand was essential. Knowing what got released later in the year, leaving him as he was would have been a disaster. So overall, a slow, slightly underwhelming start for the Balance team, but these are exactly the kind of quality of life passes the game needs long term, even if some of them felt missed in this moment. While we're looking back at the year, the devs actually sent over some stats from the game, and they're kind of amazing. So let's do a little winter quiz. At the end of the video, I'll let you know the answers to these questions. So for now, just pause the video, grab a pen, note down your guesses, and then you'll see later whether you're correct. Okay, you ready? So, who do you think was the single most used character in the entire game this year? Who was the most used character in guild raids? Who was the most used character in tournament arena? And who was the most chosen machine of war to level up in incursion? And just a little hint, all of them are different characters. And as a bonus prize, how many battles do you think there were in total in 2025? Okay, I'll see you at the end of the video. Quarter 2 felt quieter on the surface, and honestly I think that was a deliberate choice. A lot of the real heavy lifting was clearly being saved for later in the year, but there were still some important foundations laid. Tournament Arena got its strategic reserves overhaul. These are the extra NPC units that get slotted into your team, and the goal was to help weaker factions compete without needing full-blown faction reworks across both PvE and PvP. Did it work? Without stats it's hard to say, but for newer players, it definitely made picking off-meta factions feel less scary, and at lower rarities you can definitely see more variety. At the very top though, the meta stayed pretty narrow. Those NPCs just aren't threatening enough to shake up high-end play. Guild Wars added war leagues, bringing promotion and demotion into the mode with better rewards the higher you climb. Conceptually, I love it. It adds structure and a sense of long-term progression for guilds. My only real criticism is the speed. It feels too slow. My own guild usually finishes around 80th overall, and we've only moved up a single league since the system launched. I'd love to see more movement there next year to make it feel more dynamic and competitive. Q2 was also where the home screen event revolution really kicked into gear. Warp Surge and Training Rush were revamped, and from there the live service calendar just kept evolving. In the middle of the year, I think a lot of us started to feel overwhelmed by how many events were going on, but now that we've adapted, it's obvious how powerful they are for leveling our teams. Looking back, this early decision in quarter 2 set up a lot of the progression speed we are really enjoying towards the end of the year. And finally, we got the Tacticians Club, the web store with a bunch of extra offers that don't appear in the in-game shop. It's another piece of the overall ecosystem that helps the company actually thrive. I want Snowprint to be along for a long time, so anything that keeps the lights on and supports ongoing development is something I'm happy to see, and where it makes sense for me to support financially. Quarter 2 also brought the first completely new faction of the year, the Adeptus Custodes, with Trajan and Aesoth being released. Alongside them, we had the Tarvak and Forecast finishing off World Eaters and Dark Angels I mentioned already, plus the Adepta Sororitas machine of war, the Exorcist. Custodes launched with a lot of hype, but also a fair bit of disappointment initially around their survival event that launched them. It was very clear though that we just didn't fully understand how to use them yet, and fast forward to now, and that picture has completely changed. I would love to revisit that survival event with everything I know now, and see just how much better I could do in it. Either way, all of them bring something meaningful and feel like strong, well-designed additions to the game. Tarvak and Forecast though, they haven't landed as well. Tarvak still feels and looks like a budget Karn, and I don't know many players who have seriously invested in him. Forecast is perfectly serviceable, but he's competing with too many higher damage options. So unless you're building him specifically for survival or legendary events, he's a hard sell. The Exorcist is the standout machine of war for the year for me though. It was marketed as an Adepta Sororitas machine of war, but it's really found its home in the Neurothrope Guild Raid team instead. It does technically buff sisters, but with a couple of weak links in that faction, you don't see them fielded together that often. What really gave Exorcist its identity though was simple: setting enemies on fire and increasing damage when they are. That is incredibly strong with the Psyker team, and that's where it carved out a real role in the game. Balance-wise, Quarter 2 was a big improvement over Quarter 1. Titus and Sizes and Mephiston all got tuned, and we saw the start of the Black Legion rework with Harkin Worldclaimer. The simple verdict is these changes landed well. All of these characters are in a good place right now and see play across different modes, which is exactly what you want from balance passes. Mephiston in particular might be the champion I fear the most when I see him on the other side of the field. Those early year tweaks turned him into arguably the most fun and most dangerous Psyker in the game. Just before we dive in though, you know what's actually wild? By the time this goes live, this channel will have passed 10,000 subscribers, and so first of all, genuinely thank you. I started talking about Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus because this game got its hooks in deep to me, and the fact that there are over 10,000 of you coming to watch my videos is just kind of insane. So to celebrate, the team and I have put together a little thank you. You can use the code DBP10K, which lasts for about a week, and that'll get you one requisition scroll, 10 Marneus Calgar shards, 10 Jude Laska shards, and 10,000 gold. Calgar and Jude are two of my favourite characters in the entire game, so it felt right that the first time I get to do something like this, it's with those two in the bundle. So pop the code in, enjoy the goodies, and seriously, thank you so much for being part of this journey through Tacticus. Quarter 3 was basically the Mythic patch and birthday party. The Mythic update touched almost every part of progression. Higher levels and rarities, new relics and individual mission chains that lets each champion ascend to Mythic. On top of that, they rebalanced the climb to Diamond 3 for our characters, so it doesn't feel like you're running a marathon through wet concrete anymore. Dev side, this was pitched as future-proofing Tacticus, and you can really feel that. As a player, it gave me a completely new set of long-term goals. Mythic difficulties got added to events, and they're really well tuned. Clear goals for newer players, meaningful stretch goals for mid-game, and brutally fun challenges for veterans, all inside a single event instead of 3 separate versions. The real gem for me though is relics. They've become so natural to the game, I think that we've almost forgotten how big a shift they were. Without being broken, they've added a layer of tactical nuance to every champion that has one. Getting things like Revas Burst Cannon or Exeter Rose, Cardio Core Galvanis genuinely feels like a milestone now, and the way relics are woven into events keeps dragging me back in. Long term, I'd love to see multiple relic options per character, and think there's definitely a lot of design space possible there. The one weak spot is shard availability for newer releases. Marshall Dreer is the poster child for this. Getting him to wing currently feels like an impossible task without creator giveaways. Even hitting Legendary has been a push, so while Mythic is a fantastic system overall, I'd love to see the shard economy catch up so more players can realistically engage with the newer characters as they're released. Overall though, Mythic added depth on 2 fronts: strategic planning for who you invest in, and tactical gameplay and battle once those relics and levels come online. And that's a huge net positive for the long-term health of the game. Quarter 3 was the biggest character drop of the year. 6 champions and no Machine of War. We got the Emperor's Children as the Chaos faction for the year, and a surprise Horsey in Marshall Dreer. But most importantly, Carrion. Carrion absolutely reshaped the guild raid meta. He supercharged the multi-hit raid team and started putting up absurd scores without crazy investment, especially compared to what older teams needed. His faction buddy Atlakoya kinda slipped under the radar, but I genuinely think she's going to be a key legendary event piece next year once people start theory crafting around her properly. Chiron and Adamater are harder to judge right now. My gut says they'll come into their own once the ranged meta settles in 2026, but at the moment they're more future tech than everyday picks, especially as everyone's slowly leveling them up. And Dreer, if you're not leveling him for legendary events, you're gonna regret it. He's shaping up to be one of the most important characters around for that mode. Balance in Quarter 3 took a back seat because Mythic clearly ate most of the dev budget. Darkstrider, Shadowsun and Archimatos did get some love, all in the right direction. Even though none of them have suddenly become must picks, they're noticeably better to use. Solid, sensible buffs rather than headline grabbers. Quarter 4 is where everything comes together. Home screen events, systems, and quality of life changes. Live events really hit their stride. Space Hulk Survival with Baraquel was one of my favourites of the whole last year. Tons of nostalgia, great atmosphere, and it was backed up beautifully with the new Death Guard Space Hulk campaign. The community reaction around all of the home screen events was exactly what you'd want as a designer. People working together to solve the event, sharing strategies and talking about it outside of the game. Sons of Ultramar did the same thing, one of those events that made you log in and min-max your runs to make sure that you could go and shop in the Ultramart. And with the Space Wolves faction focus on the horizon, it feels like events are now something to look forward to and not just chores to clear. Arena also got an overhaul aimed at smoothing out league bouncing caused by token hoarding between seasons. Overall, it's a positive change, ranking feels a little bit more stable, and personally I still use Arena more as an event tool than a pure competitive mode, so my end of season results graph looks like a heart monitor. There's still room for improvement here. I'd love clearer guidance on what's a good score for this battle. Should I be re-rolling with Blackstone for perfect matchups, or is there an optimal range that feels like I'm not wasting my resources? Even if Arena remains a light Blackstone sink, some clarity here would make it feel more intentional. On the UI side though, the collection screen finally got a huge update with proper filters and favourites. With over 100 characters, This was desperately needed. Being able to tag favourites and filter down to the ones I'm working on saves so much time. My only wish here now is to see that philosophy carried forward into the Battlefield Team Select screens, where you're still hunting through tiny tiles when you just want to have a specific pick. Quarter 4's character pool is still recent and raw, and in Farsight's case, only just released. Tirith was probably the most divisive release of the year though, not because of her kit, but because she exposed some ugly misogyny in parts of the community over what is, at the end of the day, a bunch of pixels. In-game, she looks like she'll be very valuable for legendary events once people get past the drama and into the mechanics. Rocket Truck arrived as a tie-in with a Speed Freaks game, but even the most die-hard Orc fans in my guild are struggling with it. I've leveled it a bit, and trying to make it work in a full Orc squad is just clunky. It doesn't feel satisfying right now, and I think they missed a step here. On the flip side though, Haskell, Zikar, and Farsight all look like meta-defining pieces once they're properly in our hands and leveled up. Farsight especially being clearly designed with that upcoming ranged meta in mind, and I'm genuinely excited to see how they reshape both raids and PvP next year. Quarter 4 bounced back hard on the balance front. We saw the Black Legion rework completed with Abaddon and Volk, plus updates for Marneus Calgar and Thaddeus Noble. Thaddeus is clearly being positioned for the coming ranged meta alongside Farsight, and his tweaks feel like forward planning. We also saw the removal of the close combat weakness trait, and the replacement range specialist, which also backs these up. Marneus Calgar just needed a bit of fresh air, and he finally got it. But the big winners are Black Legion. Once you get Abaddon's relic, he becomes an absolute monster now, and Volk looks like another cornerstone of that future range meta. It was a strong, confident end to the year for balance, and I really hope that cadence continues. So looking ahead to next year, honestly, I'm really excited. 2025 was such an impactful year for Tacticus that, funnily enough, I'm almost glad we don't have another mythic on the horizon. That should free up a lot of developer capacity to focus on the actual health of the game, smoothing systems, polishing modes, and making the day-to-day experience even better. On the progression side, I think it's almost guaranteed we're going to see Adamantine 2 at some point. People are already brushing up against the cap, and I'd be very surprised if we get through the whole year without it. If I had to guess, I'd say late summer, with Adamantine 3 probably being the year after. We probably don't need Adamantine 3 right now, but for Adamantine 2, once it arrives, it's going to make those final tiers of legendary events a bit more accessible without really breaking everyday gameplay. For modes, I'd love to see a proper rework of the hero release events. Right now, they're fine. We're all in a pattern. You log in, you spend your 110 Blackstone a day, play Tournament Arena, and you can usually secure the new champ at Epic 1. It works, but there's so much more potential here, whether that's a brand new mode, like how Incursion is the home for Machines of War, or just turning those missions into more flavorful, tactical chains instead of pure grind. I also want to see more events in the style of the Space Hulk Survivals and the Death Guard campaign. Those absolutely hit me in the nostalgia and made me want to log in just for the vibe. Anything that captures that Warhammer story and miniature feeling is really going to be a win for me. But just overall, this last month in December with all the events has really impressed me, and I hope that long continues into next year. We'll almost certainly see more collaborations with other Warhammer games too. Maybe a 6th Orc that riffs on the Dawn of War game, or a new Admech or Necron tied to the next Mechanicus game. There's a lot of room there to bring the wider universe into Tacticus in fun ways. Let's just hope they're handled a bit better than the Orc Rocket Truck. For Guild Raid bosses, my money and my heart is on Fulgrim. With Emperor's Children now in the game, I think it feels almost inevitable. He'd be such an iconic raid boss to add, although I'd also love to see something like Lionel Johnson on the Imperial side one day, but maybe that's me dreaming a little bit too big. On the balance front, my hope is simple: keep doing what was done in Quarter 4, but pointed at the worst performing characters in the game. I don't need Niall, Thutmose, Morvenval, Certus, Parasite and Mortrex, or half the World Eaters faction to suddenly become raid gods. I just love to see them have specific roles where they actually shine. Maybe they're tuned for Guild Wars, or become spicy tech picks in Tournament Arena. There's a lot of design fun to be had there, and a regular honest look at the underused champions would keep the roster feeling alive, and maybe make us not feel so bad about leveling some of these when we were newer players. Speaking of Tournament Arena, I'd love to see drafting come into Tournament Arena. It might slow things down a little bit, but being able to bring real tech picks into our teams would be really fun. So for example, I'm coming up against a really solid team, I'm going to pick Cygex to blast through them. That sort of thing. I've spoke about it a couple of times, and we're definitely going to see a real shake-up of the guild raid meta, with range teams really coming to the battlefield once everyone gets them leveled up. We can already see that they can compete with the best teams out there, and it's just going to be another year for changing around and leveling up different characters to really min-max those results. But of course, I would be completely missing out if I didn't mention Castellan Creed, who is still the most average character in the game. What do you think, Creed? Is it time for a change for you?
About time, frankly. I've been holding the line, calling in the guard, and winning wars with my wits while everyone else gets shinier toys and louder explosions. If 2026 finally brings me a buff, I'll call it what it is. Long overdue recognition of proper Imperial command. And if it doesn't, well, I've been winning without it so far. A buff would just make it fair.
I couldn't agree more, Creed. And then there are the new releases. We had 17 characters and 4 Machines of War this year, but I honestly think 2 releases a month, on average, is realistic going forwards. So somewhere up to 24 new characters doesn't feel too crazy. My guess is 3 full new factions, plus Machines of War and 6 characters for existing factions. The release pattern has always been Imperial, then Chaos, then Xenos, and we already know that League of Votann is coming as the next Xenos faction, which leaves 1 new Imperial and 1 new Chaos slot to fill. And there's a lot of big names left on the table. If you want a deep dive into likely candidates, go watch Nox Tempest's video, Let's Guess the Next Faction. I'll link it in the description below, and he's just a fantastic creator, so check out his stuff over the holidays if you haven't already. Personally, this year I'm hoping for Imperial Fists, and yes, partly just because I love yellow, but mainly because I'm still reading the Horus Heresy, and they're such an important part of that. And on the Chaos side, Alpha Legion would be the other one, again because I really enjoy this whole are they, aren't they duplicity in the Horus Heresy. But please remember, I'm still catching up on 40k lore, so no spoilers in the comments please. For 6 characters, I'd love to see more healers. Fabius Bile as a twisted support for the Emperor's Children would be amazing. On the Xenos side, maybe an Eldari Spirit Seer, or a Drukhari Demonulcus somewhere down the line. We've got plenty of damage dealers now, and with Baldur joining the Space Wolves, it's really time to spread healing out across Chaos and Xenos. However it plays out though, I'm genuinely happy to see Tacticus in Snowprint's hands going into the next year. Overall, I think they've done a really solid job in 2025, and if they keep listening, iterating, and being willing to tweak both systems and characters, I'm confident we're going to have so much to talk about and plenty to play for a long time to come. Okay, coming back to our winter quiz answers, the single most used character in the entire game this year was Bellator. Not your shiny legendaries, not Ragnar or Karn, just Bellator quietly carrying the player base. In guild raids, the most used unit was Harken World Claimer. Can you believe that? I guess that patch did really good for him. In Tournament Arena, it was Boss Golgorts bullying people on the ladder, which I don't think is a surprise to any of us. And in Incursion, the most chosen unit was Forge Fiend, which again will surprise absolutely nobody who's touched a tile in that mode. And across all of that, players logged over 1 billion battles this year. 1 billion. So when we talk about balance waves, champion releases, or mode reworks, that's the scale we're dealing with. These changes aren't just theory, they're literally shaping billions of battles. And so that's the story of 2025 in terms of content and balance. Big systems like Mythic, some really smart reworks, and a couple of misses, but a lot of progress overall. But before we close for the year, there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that's the mood in the community. If you spend any time on Reddit, Discord, or even down in the comments under these videos, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's this constant doom posting. Every balance change is the end of the game, every new event is the worst thing they've ever done, and every faction released is the wrong one. Now, I'm not saying people are wrong to be frustrated. We do put a lot of time into this game, and some of you put a lot of money into it as well. And when something feels unfair or badly communicated, that sting is real. I do feel this too. But here's the problem. If all we ever do is feed ourselves that constant negativity, it absolutely nukes your own enjoyment. You can log into a game you actually like with a roster you've spent months building and still feel miserable before you've even played a match, just because you've spent an hour scrolling through people telling you it's all pointless. And it's not just a Tacticus thing. This is every live service game, every hobby with passionate people. The spiral is always the same. And so going into this new year, for our resolutions, what I'd love is for us to remember why we started playing. For most of us, it was just a cool Warhammer models doing dumb over-the-top things in a tactics game on our phone. But if you haven't had genuinely fun moments in weeks, maybe that's not a balance patch issue. Maybe it's not a content creator issue. Maybe that's a take a step back and reset issue. And finally, just try and be the kind of person in the comments that you'd actually want to talk to. Disagree, push back, call stuff out, absolutely. But if every time you post it's only to say how awful everything is, at some point it's not the game that's making you unhappy. So my hope for next year is simple, that this little corner of Tacticus, this channel, this community, can be a place where we can all still call problems what they are, but also we can enjoy the game, help each other, and don't make our own mental health worse over a mobile game. And so that's where I am with the community side of things, but just to bring this video to a close, I want to say that this has been a lot to consume, 54 pages of patch notes we've had this year, and it's been impossible to cram all that into one video. If I've missed things or I've made mistakes along the way, it's completely on me, and I apologize in advance because I'm sure there'll be at least a couple of them. What I'd really love from you next though is tell me in the comments, what has been the most impactful thing for you this year? And what are you genuinely excited for next year? Because if you've been playing Tacticus for a while, it probably feels like something's fundamentally shifted this year. And I think you're absolutely right. This wasn't just 12 months of here's some new characters and a couple of events. This was the year Snowprint stopped treating Tacticus like a rotating hero collector and started treating it like a long-term strategy platform. For me, 2025 was a transformational year, not a maintenance year. The game is deeper, the systems are clearer, the cadence is more predictable, and there's a much stronger sense that we're building towards something and not just spinning the wheel for the next release. So wherever you are with the game right now, if you're a new player, if you're a mid player, or you're a veteran, I'm glad you're here, and I just hope this has helped to make sense of the year we've just had. And if you want to be here for that journey, the rants, the raids, the theory crafting, and the bad predictions that don't age well, hit like, subscribe, and let's see what Tacticus looks like next year.